Hello and welcome to episode 140 of the PubShorts. It's called The Smoke. My name is Dr. KK. I'm the Innovation Officer at Inago, and I have with me Tony. Hi, Tony.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tony O'Rourke. I am VP for Partnerships here at Inago, and welcome to episode 140, as KK rightly says.
Yeah.
The Smoke. And why is it called The Smoke? Well, we like, as you may know, or may not know, or care, but we name these episodes after songs, mostly from British bands. And this particular song, The Smoke, comes from a band called The Smile, which is basically an offshoot of Radiohead, from I think 2 or 3 years ago now.
Mm.
The song's hazy tension fits a week about open peer review, integrity infrastructure, and AI in practice, good and bad,
Yep.
where transparency improves signal, but too much still happens behind the smoke. So I'm
Very.
so glad we didn't pick Smoke on the Water.
We would not. We may have, but Tony, one other thing that I think we are trying to do differently. Yes. Okay. Fine. Fine. I know that you don't like the song, but everybody, as a
Oh, no,
guitar.
I don't mind the song. It's just one of these songs that I've heard so many
Yeah.
times in my
Yeah.
life. I would be quite happy if I never hear.
But
I mean, it's
but
a great song. Don't get me wrong,
but
and it's a great theme.
yes, also it's a song that all guitar players start learn. I mean, learn. I mean,
I know,
yeah.
but there's that joke, isn't there, from that film where you go into a guitar shop to pick up a guitar. There's signs on the wall saying "No smoke, no stairway," and there's another one: "No blackbirds, no blackbirds."
Right.
The people in the guitar shop hear it so
Yes.
many
Oh
times.
my God,
Anyway, back
Blackbird.
to the
Yeah.
smoke.
No, 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 no. One other thing. So I'd like to add. So Tony said that we do name our episodes on the basis of like songs exclusively so far from the, I guess, the UK. I mean, that region, as well as now in the year 2026, we are also trying to name some more modern songs. I mean, preferably from the 2020s, new bands, because we also like to listen to new music, and I think we also should attribute some of these. I mean, it's fun to do this, and why not do with new artists? Okay, so with that,
What the hell is our show?
all right. With that, I move to our first story, and this is an article from a research paper from the Journal of Informetrics. It is titled "Publish Peer Reviews Reports Have Higher Informative Content than Unpublished Reports." You might say that yes, you would know that, but anyway, let's go through some of the points. It analyzes a large data set of peer review reports, and when peer review reports are published, they tend to be more informative. And this was measured by looking at the length and content of the reports, with published ones having more suggestion and solution sentences. Interesting. And the reports written by women, Tony, were found to be more informative than those by men. And reviewers from non-Western institutions submitted reports that were less informative and readable. Published reports were also found to be more readable and more similar in structure to each other. That means, I think, when you are forced to sort of publish it, or when you know that your report is about to get published, you probably follow the guidelines, follow the template. And one interesting point is that the study used natural language processing to analyze the reports. So that's one way. So that's why we know that there's a style. And it also comments that while publishing reports increases transparency, the study suggests that it also encourages reviewers to be more constructive. So I would love to be in a world where every aspect of an academic uh, article, the every sort of publishable aspect should be published. That includes the peer review reports, also the changes that the authors make on the basis of the peer review reports, and any future corrections. And I'm sure that you agree with me on that.
Um, okay. First, let's talk about peer review reports first.
Uh-huh.
I kind of understand why published peer review reports are more informative because, particularly if it's fully transparent, if the reviewer is named, um, it's another publication of sorts, and
Right.
therefore they want their publication to be as exhaustive, as comprehensive, as attributable to the author and in as positive a way as possible. If the reviewer, I know this shouldn't be the case, but if we're honest, it is.
Mm-hmm.
If the reviewer knows that this report will not be seen outside of that review process, then he or she may not be quite so thorough. Oh,
Right.
no, thorough is the wrong word, but maybe quite so um, so detailed
Yeah,
in
that's
their coverage and the content and what they say as they would in something that's going to be published. So I kind of understand that. So, and it's good I think it's open peer review, and these open peer review reports is positive. It is contributing towards the knowledge, the literature, I think. However, I don't agree with your comment that we should publish absolutely everything. I don't think there's a scope, there's a requirement to publish everything. And I remember, if I go back far enough, one of the problems that many publishers had going back, not even 20 years ago, less than 20 years ago, had with particularly from researchers in the East, was that there was too much, what they used to call it, what was it called? Sort of, it was too much salami slicing. That's it. Right. Salami slicing publication. So you had one paper for the theory, one paper for the methodology, one paper for the experiment, one paper for the conclusions, another paper. So you had like 5 or 6 papers that the author would present. And what a good, solid research journal that wants to sort of reflect the knowledge as it stands expects is one paper to cover everything.
Right.
Because ultimately that's what researchers are research poor. They don't have the time to go through every single possible variant of every single detail. And there are ways of finding out about methodology, there are ways of finding out about the theory if they need to find out more information from the references that the author has used. But I personally believe that it's better to have one good, thorough, exhaustive article that has everything covered than to salami slice it.
Right. I completely agree with you on the fact that salami slicing is not good. What I was referring to, if suppose we have, let's say, the research paper that we just saw, if that is published, if suppose you have all the related information, for example, the peer review, if suppose it was a peer reviewed paper, what were the comments and how did the authors respond to it? And let's say in future, let's say 2 years down the line, there was a correction to the paper. If the person who eventually reads it 2 years later gets to know all of it, that person will be a much more sort of informed person as to how the paper evolved.
Absolutely. Yeah. If anything comes up that will effectively change the literature, like errata or retractions, for example, then it's the role of the publisher to ensure that those errata, those retractions, those co-agenda are clearly communicated. Yeah. Absolutely, I completely agree with that.
Yeah.
And also, then we have the conversation about how it affects the broader literature itself. Yeah. If a paper is retracted, do you then have a conversation with an A&I provider, so an indexer, to say, look, now that this paper's been retracted, we need you to retract this from your index.
Right. And this is exactly what we talked about, I think, in 2 episodes ago about LLM retractions. A wonderful segue.
I'm not just talking about LLMs. I'm talking about the big A&I databases. There's the big industry-wide subject specialist databases that have been used for years.
Yeah, I meant that we talked about this aspect as well while covering that story. But it's a nice plug for episode 138 if you're interested in watching. And moving on to the next story, Tony. This is from Learned Publishing, open access. Is that the way best to say it, or should I say Association of Learned?
No, from Learned Publishing.
Okay, fine.
It's the official journal of the Association of Learned Professional Society Publishers. Learned Publishing is the name of the journal.
This is an opinion piece. It's called Academic Peer Review, Eliminating the Option of Reject Without Author Response. So it's a sort of an interesting take. So the primary argument is that journals should eliminate the option of rejecting a manuscript without giving the authors a chance to respond to reviewer comments. The authors point out that peer review can be flawed due to reviewer biases, lack of expertise, or even the use of AI tools that might misunderstand research. They believe that denying authors a response violates the fundamental rights to be heard and to defend one's work, similar to principles in human rights law. And the article suggests that outright rejection is inefficient and counterproductive, and that allowing authors to respond before a final decision can lead to fairer outcomes and reduce the need for lengthy appeals. The authors touch upon the increasing use of AI in peer review, which we have also touched upon in many episodes, highlighting risks like hallucination and biased replication, and emphasize that authors should have recourse if AI-generated feedback is flawed. And they propose that the journal should shift from a model of outright rejection, like hard rejection, I suppose, to one where authors can withdraw their manuscript or decline to revise it if they disagree with the feedback, rather than being unilaterally rejected. Now, I think I broadly agree with this, but how feasible is it to have such a thing, Tony, in the current publishing setup?
That's a real toughie. I think it's feasible. Mm-hmm. Whether it's something that should be introduced, I don't know. I mean, look, the peer review process is flawed. Of course, it's flawed. Like all good systems, there are things that you could be improved, but it works. You
Hmm.
know, in the vast majority of cases, it's a relatively, and it's getting more and more efficient, but it's a relatively efficient way of identifying and screening those papers that best reflect the broad scopes and you know subject coverage of that particular journal. To remove that kind of auto reject option, in a sense, is, I mean, look, an author can object, an author can claim that the review process is wrong. Of course they can, but it's still ultimately the editor in chief's decision as to whether something gets published or not. I don't believe it will add to the process. I think if anything, it will extend the process of communication in terms of how long it will take for a paper to get published.
I see your
So
point.
I'm not sure if it's a good idea. I mean, there are plenty of places. If the author's absolutely determined to make something available, there are preprints, there are institutional repositories. You know, until such a point where a relatively an important journal then agrees to publish that paper as it is,
But
or with whatever corrections.
so let me ask you this question. If suppose a journal employs AI for as part of its peer review process, and
Mm.
that peer review, the AI sort of assisted peer review creates the decision, which the I mean, because let's say there are two or three reviewers, and let's say one human reviewer and another human reviewer have contrasting opinions. The AI reviewer reviewed whatever that response aligns with the rejection, the person who rejected the reviewer who wanted to not accept it. In that case, it'll be a hard rejection, I think. And the argument that the authors of this article are making is that this, because of the potential, the chances of flawed, let's say, peer review analyses, the humans, that's the authors, should have a chance to respond. And I think I see the point that what I would say is that we should probably also look on why would you be worried about AI systems creating such a, let's say, incorrect response, and maybe those checkpoints, those let's say AI assisted review platforms should be improving in terms of being more reliable in terms of their output. So that's the way I would look at it, as a sort of a
Yeah,
feedback.
and my comments related to the traditional human single or double human peer review process. There may be a requirement to do this when you're introducing more AI into the equation, because of course then
Yeah.
there is a possible element of fallibility, and therefore there should be some opportunity, some recourse that the author can take if they disagree with the findings of the review. Um, yeah, I mean the thing is about human peer review. It's coming. It's gonna happen. It's already happening to a certain extent. Um, it should be together with human guardrails, of course, as we've always said, and shouldn't be taken in isolation. But yeah, maybe there's an argument to have a process in place if the author believes that the one of the reviewers has made an error, and if that particularly if that reviewer is the AI.
Right, right. I think the next story is a scholarly kitchen article, but I think I'm struggling to find the notes of it. So it's titled "The Guest." It's a guest post from the scholarly kitchen: AI use from policies to reality. Let me find the notes here. So this is actually a reflection of the panel discussion from Cope's Publication Integrity Week about the realities and policies surrounding AI use in scholarly communications. And it highlights that while many researchers regularly use AI, which Tony, we have talked about, the usage of AI is probably underreported across the spectrum. There's a gap between current capabilities and policy in understanding, leading a policy in terms of understanding, and this leads to hesitancy in disclosure and a need for pragmatic, evolving guidelines. And I'm very, very happy to plug the workshop that I'm participating in, the Researcher to Read conference next month in London, along with our colleague Mary Miskin, where we are talking about setting sort of these frameworks of how to disclose AI and how to responsibly use AI. So this panel, many attendees, and it's a reality. The challenge is that users and policymakers are trying to keep up with AI's capabilities, and that the pragmatic policies that they suggest run into many different suggestions, and basically it calls for standardizing AI policy across, let's say, publishers and institutions, and ask the stakeholders to lead with examples. So what are your thoughts of it? And I don't know, if are you coming to the Researcher to Read a conference as a,
I'm not. I'm
uh,
not going. I'm not attending the conference personally. There's enough of us going. Um, I think what this paper is basically arguing is what we've been arguing for the last nearly 2 years around the responsible AI movement. Anyone who's a regular viewer of this episode will know KK and I talk about this. We take this. We feel very strongly about this.
mhm.
That it's absolutely essential that researchers follow best practice when it comes to the use and disclosure of the use of AI. and there has to be openness and transparency in terms of what they're using, how they're using it. Um, the reality is, as authors, researchers are going to use AI, but they just need to inform the reviewer how AI is being used.
Yeah, I think.
And publishers' policies are changing all the time to reflect that as well.
Yeah, I think I did not switch my screen, right, Tony? Just point out when I fail to do that. I forget sometimes because when we're having a conversation, I switch to the bigger video screen. So this is the article that I was talking about. I guess I did not switch screen. Apologies for that. So moving on to the next story, new report from STM Association. New report documents publisher investment in research integrity infrastructure. So this one is, obviously, as the title claims, it's about investment in infrastructure, and publishers have built a significant capacity in this area, and many publishers now have dedicated research integrity teams. These teams screen millions of manuscripts annually, and they use a mix of technology and human expertise. The sweet and a sweet middle ground in terms of embracing AI while at the same time having human overview. And this investment is driven by increased global R&D spending and more sophisticated threats. These threats include paper mills and AI generated content. And the report details many things, including the fact that there's a need for re-establishing the trust in research itself, and there are key areas of publisher action including capacity, practice, and coordination. And initiatives such as the STM Integrity Hub and COPE are also highlighted. Interesting report. I mean, I don't know if you got a chance to read it, but do you have any thoughts on this, Tony?
Um, it doesn't surprise me that the investment in the research integrity infrastructure is changing. It has to change. It's had to change for the last few years. We've been having long conversations around the use of our research integrity tools, or those tools that best answer some of those questions. And the conversations have taken a long time, but now we're seeing publishers actually investing and putting money behind their plans, and no longer moving from pilot stages into actual putting these tools into production, because they know as their content, as their volumes increase, so there's a need to be able to screen that content effectively and identify potential bad active, bad content.
And this report has its own dedicated page that is here, and both are linked in the show description on YouTube if you were to be interested. So please do check it out, and we strongly recommend these articles, these reports, I would say, from the STM Association.
I would say I would recommend anything that is produced from the STM. If there's a closest thing to a guaranteed quality kite mark, it's the STM Association brand, and the same with Alps, with learning publishing. If it's coming out of STM or it's coming out of Alps or SSP, it's an almost guarantee of quality.
Yeah. And at the end of our main story section, we have an interesting opinion piece, a blog piece from a new blog, which I think I came across through, if I'm not mistaken, Journalogy. It is titled "The Blank Box Problem: Why it's harder than ever to know what to type into an AI search bar." And honestly, Tony, until I read this article, I hadn't thought of it. So what basically, as human, we have used to search bars, for example, Google search, and with the advent of AI, things are changing, and we don't quite know how to deal with this. Is the basic summary of it. So traditional interfaces had clear affordances like Boolean operators. For example, Google Scholar, you have Boolean search strings and everything, and advanced search screens. Unlike the current blank box of AI research, and users face what the author refers to as input ambiguity, and how to speak to use a machine, and the capability ambiguity that they don't quite know what the machine is capable of. And this leads to confusion about the optimal query phrasing, keywords, natural language, and prompts. As in, we use a mix of these days. And systems like the Semantic Scholar demonstrate how natural language queries can yield poor results if the underlying engine is primarily lexical and not semantic. So Semantic Scholar offers both, and capability ambiguity arises from three main issues: retrieval, abstraction, similarity spectrum versus discrete buckets. As in, this is a sort of a machine learning sort of a thing, as in terms of how to query a machine and get the right answer. And filter recognition in natural knowledge, and workflow composition limitation. So we are going to a little bit of systems thinking and everything. So it's a little complex, but at the same time, I hadn't thought of it. And failures in AI search are often silent, in the sense we do not know that it was a querying method that failed. and difficult for users to diagnose, leading to frustration and wasted effort when capabilities are misunderstood or absent. And
Yeah.
solutions include better examples with prompt examples. Maybe if you have an AI sort of Gen AI assisted search, maybe you can provide prompt examples, maybe even templates for that matter, hybrid UIs with visible filters, type ahead suggestions, explicit constraint confirmation, and exposing tool layers to users. So I thought this is excellent, especially in the context of academic search. I mean, we already know that everybody is going through Google and ending their inquisitory journeys at Google search AI overviews. Now, if you go to academic publishing, researchers are still trying to find the best papers to read and to get inspired in terms of research. And for such platforms, especially, you need more sort of these old-fashioned filters and maybe prompt examples and everything. What are your thoughts?
Well, two thoughts come to mind. First of all, how essential it is now as part of the education process to teach prompt engineering really at every stage. If a learner, if a student is going to be using AI to help them in identifying sources for their work, they need to know how to write the prompt in the most effective way. So that's the one thing. The second thing that comes to mind is, and I'm thinking back in my own career now, the kind of resources I've been involved in the past, huge sort of collections of literary databases, for example, which we've made available on various platforms, which were very much Boolean based sort of,
Mm-hmm.
keywords type searches within full text. The kind of possibilities good prompt AI prompted engineering creates in terms of looking for deeper relationships within the content to understand kind of the real um, roots and weeds of a particular piece of work or a particular collection of works. I think is super exciting.
Mm.
I'd love to be a researcher now if that's how their tools are going to help them.
All right, Tony, ready to move to quick hits?
Oh, something I should mention. I don't think we're talking about it today. I saw with interest that Elsevier have just recently released a new kind of AI supported workspace,
Yep.
and I think we should look. We should certainly look to find out more about that and talk about that in a future episode. Because if Elsevier are doing it, the world's largest collection of research journals with Science Direct, then we need to find out more.
Right, and I think that's coming up in another episode. But interestingly, the first quick hit that we have is related to something like that. So this we are talking about paperreview.ai. This is a Stanford agentic reviewer. If you remember, Tony Stanford have been pioneers in terms of AI applications, and this is an AI reviewer that they have just come out with. So it is basically AI powered research paper reviewer. Automated feedback is sent to authors, and this service, obviously on this website, is to assist researchers by providing suggestions, though it cautions the use about potential AI generated errors as well. So that's a sort of a given. And as far as I understand, any author can sort of upload a manuscript, and I think in a few minutes they get a AI peer reviewed report. And because it is from this well known brand and trustworthy brand, I'm saying that if Stanford has its own AI reviewer, I don't see why any publisher, I mean any company for that matter, would have a similar sort of a platform, except apart from obviously maybe more subject area focused products or some other features and stuff like that. What are your thoughts?
If it's good enough for Stanford, it's got to be good enough for everybody else. And we've said for the last 6 months to a year that AI and peer review is not just coming; it's here. And here's a really good example of how a trusted brand like Stanford can get
Mm.
behind
Right.
this as a principle.
Right. Okay. The next quick hit we have is the Nature news article. AIs are biased towards some Indian castes. How can researchers fix it? I mean, this is obviously. I just wanted to bring. I mean, use this article to bring out the point, which we sometimes forget that AI or the training, the data that goes into the AI, the training that it received is biased, and hence it can replicate and amplify these biases. And this is one such bias that has been amplified. So this is it's specific related to Indian caste and a problem identified through specialized tools designed to detect caste bias in large language models. And they are the researchers who conducted the study are actively working on solutions to mitigate the case as well. Nothing surprising, but I'm sort of curious about the fact that how did such cast bias related data get into the AI models to begin with? Any thoughts on that, Tony?
I'm not in a position to be able to comment. I've got no idea how that data could have even got into those systems.
Yeah, that tells you how. I mean, if suppose you use news, maybe a lot of cast or maybe even demographic data for that matter. I don't know. I don't have the answer. Anyway, the last one is probably will bring a chuckle to you. It is from Retraction Watch: Techno Babble Papers by a professor and editors under scrutiny. So this is from Retraction Watch about a paper. I mean, about papers authored by and reviewed by a particular person, and reviewers found the work to be techno babble and questioned the scientific rigor of these papers. The online profiles of the concerned individual vanished after Retraction Watch got in touch with them. And one reviewer apparently repeatedly encountered the same manuscript submitted to different journals, each time with minimal changes and questionable content, like a sine wave figure presented as an anatomical structure. Oh my god, that's quite a comparison. But at the same time, I mean, we have talked about this, Tony, before. If suppose the same paper is being submitted to many publishers, and if you have to have a detection, publishers have to talk to each other, and this infrastructure sort of communication collaboration framework is what the STM Integrity Hub champions and it promotes. And I think this is a solution for at least screening and preventing many of the research integrity threats. So your thoughts on this?
Well, I'm also curious how publishers know where something's been previously submitted, unless the author's actually been open and declaring their submission history. Normally it's not communicated. I do a lot of work with the publishers I work with, for example, to understand the destination journal, the journal that the author has in mind when they're submitting the paper to the publisher, and where the paper eventually ends up. And in many cases, of course, it will go into the destination journal if it's good enough, it meets all the scope requirements, and it meets and it passes peer review. But equally, in many cases, it may appear in another journal. I don't know whether that's a second or a third or a fourth submission attempt, but that submission history is only really known by the author. I don't think that submission history is tracked anywhere. I mean, no DOI is allocated to a paper until the paper is published. So how does one possibly know if you're going to submit to Journal A and you're unsuccessful, and then you submit to Journal B and Journal C, and you're only successful in Journal D, what those first three journals are? I'm kind of baffled as to how they find out.
And the only way you can find out is by Journal A communicating to the rest of the journals that it has been submitted. And how does it find it? It probably uses metadata, including titles and whatever the author related metadata. And this is exactly
there's a huge opportunity here, and I think and potentially also a huge risk for the author, because if that information becomes apparent, something that might have been rejected from 3 titles, if it's clear, if there's public information about that paper being rejected, it might get rejected from that 4th, really, before any peer review takes place.
Right. And this is exactly, I mean, I think we have talked about this. STM Integrity Hub does it. It's not public. It is for the publishers who have joined in this sort of shared infrastructure.
That's why I'm baffled, because eventually I always work on the principle that every solid piece of research, every solid piece of honest research will eventually find a home. It may not be the first place, and maybe it might be the second or third, but why create barriers? Why create an additional barrier for that paper to find an ultimate home?
It's not barriers. It's about sort of passing on the information. I mean, so one of the things I think we have talked about in a previous
but how would you use that information? So I mean, I know how I would use it.
Let's say Journal A for let's say it's a physics journal in the case, and if suppose the paper was about astronomy and the reason for rejection was because of scope match, then that information can be passed on to another journal, and that because it has already been scoped in favor of this journal, and maybe some peer review has already happened, that we don't have to do that entire process in the second journal. That's a sort of principle of publishers communicating with each other.
But that in reality doesn't. Well, it shouldn't happen. The decision as to whether an article is published or not is for that individual journal itself. What's happened in a previous journal? A submission may be made to a journal which was completely out of scope or completely not relevant for that journal, but the author's maybe trying it on more than they should. But the second or third journal is much more directly appropriate because the scope fits. It has a type of paper that the type of manuscript that that journal normally accepts.
Right.
It may be in profile, because there's a difference between not every journal can be a Nobel Prize winning, groundbreaking novel source. Some of it is just about publishing solid research and to show the state of knowledge
Right.
as it stands today.
Right.
So I don't know. I need to think more about how this information could be used. But I know my first instinct is to say how the only way this would help is by accelerating the decision to reject the paper.
Well, I see your point, but at the same time, this is obviously has been talked about in terms of how it can benefit.
Oh, sure.
Yeah,
sure,
the publishing industry itself, because of the transference of, let's say, potential research integrity flags across publishers would be useful. Anyway, from an audience point of view, this communication is good, but I also see from a point of view of a researcher author that it may not be. So, what is, however, good for the audience, we know, is that we have the 139 episodes, which you can find on our YouTube channel, and Tony will explain why and how.
Why is because it's there. How is somebody's uploaded it to YouTube. If you want to find out, if you want to see all previous 139 episodes, all you need to go to is to the Inago page on YouTube. Just search for the PubShorts playlist, and you'll see all previous 139 episodes there. And we encourage you to press that like button, share the videos with your colleagues. And if you find something of interest, let us know. If you don't find it interesting, let us know. And if you've got ideas for future topics, let us know.
Yes, and we have
in the comments.
But yes, we are grateful for all the feedback that we have received so far. And until the next time, Tony, this is Dr. KK signing off. We will see you in the next one. Bye, Tony.
See you next one.